Hi, Cornelia Ward again here today. So you notice I still have my hat on if you saw the video from yesterday. It's still really cold here. It's like 0 degrees in Burlington, Vermont. And actually tomorrow it's going to be in the 20s. We're going to have like a heat wave. It's going to feel great. So today's video are the 5 success tips for using affirmations in an effective way to really kind of move you forward in a positive way, and especially navigating transitions in your life. So what is an affirmation? An affirmation is a positive statement that you make that is affirming a certain truth, for instance. So it has to be positive. It's usually, if it's nice and short, it's good. Usually it's in the present tense, although I'm going to give you an example of one that is actually in the past tense. But let me give you an example. So I am healthy and vibrant. You know, that's really quick. It uses I am, which is a great kind of powerful way to kind of phrase an affirmation. And it's really positive. So that one might be something, you know, when you're feeling kind of low energy or not feeling so great health-wise, that might be an affirmation to use. But I'm actually, I will give you the link again to my book where you can order it on pre-order right now. There's actually a whole chapter on affirmations with a long list, because I have been pulling together affirmations for many years that I use myself. So if you're looking for some examples, that would be an example. Or, you can just go on the internet and, look for some examples of some affirmations. Okay, but I'm going to give you actually a couple today, which are really powerful ones. Okay, so let me give you the 5 tips. The first one is, once you've figured out what affirmations you like to use or feel inspired by, you can actually record them. And it's really easy. You can either use your smartphone or your laptop or your computer. It's really easy these days just to record your own voice. And then what you can do is, so here you are, you're saying the affirmations, but then first thing in the morning, or actually last thing at night, but I actually do it first thing in the morning. I listen to the affirmations that I've recorded in my own voice first thing. And it's just a really positive way to start the day. So that would be tip number 1. Tip number 2 is actually from the author Sandra Ann Taylor. And what she recommends is that you're thinking all day long anyway, right? And often all these kind of negative, crabby kind of thoughts come into our heads without really being invited. They just kind of crowd themselves in. So doing them in rounds. So think about, like if you're working out at the gym, you do lifts in rounds, for instance. So what she recommends is to, just take an affirmation that really, it has a quote unquote charge on it. So it feels really good. It feels uplifting when you say it. And you can say it over and over and over and over to yourself. And I do this a lot, and this is really simple. The most effective tools actually are usually really simple, but it's really effective. I can tell you from my clients' point of view, my students, as well as my own experience. And I'm actually going to give you those examples in a minute. Okay. So the third tip on using affirmations in a successful way is recognizing when you feel fear, that tightness in your stomach, or those negative thoughts start coming in, or something comes up during the day and you're kind of like, like there's kind of that red flag kind of feeling, like this doesn't feel good. So the third tip is to remember to use your affirmations, saying them over and over again when something comes up where you feel fearful. Okay, so let me just give you an example actually from my book, which I'll talk about in a second. So an example of how I've used an affirmation in a situation where I felt kind of not in control and kind of scared was a couple of years ago, when my son, actually, who's now 26, so I guess he was 25 at the time, and he was living in Vermont as well, a couple of hours away from where I am in Burlington. And he just called me one day and was just in a whole lot of pain and was not feeling good at all and really was out of sorts. I could kind of tell he was getting a fever. He wasn't really articulate on the phone, and he's an English major, or he was. So he's like really articulate usually. So there's little things were kind of showing up in our conversation that I knew meant that he really was not doing well. And so what I did is I immediately just packed a bag, grabbed my 2 dogs, didn't have time to set up dog care, and threw everything in the car. Now, I had a couple of hours, driving time to get there, but my car, actually, I had made an appointment with the car mechanic to get it fixed. And I hadn't had a chance to get to the garage yet. My appointment was a couple of days later. And so I just was crossing my fingers like, okay, this car's been making this really loud noise, but I need to get, to my son's home to go get him so I can take him to the doctor and, maybe to the hospital. We were thinking maybe it was appendicitis, so he was in a lot of pain. So the affirmation I used, and this one is an example of one that actually is used in the past tense. And I got it actually from Cheryl Richardson, who's a Hay House author. And the affirmation she recommends is, everything has worked out perfectly. So it's an affirmation that whatever situation you're in, even if it seems kind of out of control and there's so many kind of things up in the air and a lot of moving parts, that it actually does end up being okay. And it feels pretty good, and I can tell you it's really effective. So what I did, just as an example, is I started saying that affirmation over and over and over again. Everything has worked out perfectly, because here I am with a car that I'm not sure is going to make it on this 2-hour trip, and lots of noise coming out of the tailpipe, and my son is like in a lot of pain. So so I basically said that the whole time. So I was still in Burlington when the car just kind of crashed and burned, and a big noise happened, and I knew I wasn't going to be able to drive it any further. So I actually, when this happened, I was literally right next to, like 2 blocks from the car mechanic's location where I had made the appointment. And so I just pulled, turned right instead of going straight, pulled into the car mechanics, left my car there. And then a friend of mine who lives in my neighborhood, I gave her a call and said, this just happened. I'm trying to get down to Nick, my son. I'm at the garage. Wonder if you maybe could come pick me up and give me a ride back home. And it turned out she was just leaving. It was perfect timing. Okay, so everything has worked out perfectly, right? So far. Okay, so I continue to say this affirmation. I obviously am not going to be going anywhere that day. Nick made an arrangement to go to the doctor and get a ride there. So my car, and actually this all happened on a Sunday. So the garage wasn't open. And so I called them first thing Monday morning and told them what happened, that I needed to get down to Dorset, which was 2 hours south of Burlington. And they actually got the car fixed like in 2 hours, and I didn't even have an appointment. So, and again, I got a ride down there easily and quickly, threw the dogs in my bag back in the car, headed down to Dorset, got to Nick. He was like not doing well. So we packed his old LL Bean bag. You remember those old, if you've been around long enough, in the 60s, I guess it was, they made these really rugged brown canvas bags with the leather handles. And so Nick has one of those, my old one actually. And so we packed that up, getting ready to go to the hospital in case we needed to. And as it turned out, we did need to head down to the hospital, which was actually another hour south of Dorset, to Bennington, Vermont. And we checked into the hospital. It was confirmed he had appendicitis. All the testing, everything went really quickly. And boom, 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 we were moving quite quickly in the emergency room. And then the surgeon came down, introduced himself, told us what was going to happen. Again, everything went perfectly. And again, I'm saying the affirmation the whole time. I was told then that when he was in surgery, I was told that we couldn't get a private room for him so that I could spend the night with him by ourselves. And then it turned out after surgery that we did have a private room. So again, things had gone really well. The surgery went really well. And I stayed in the room with him. All the service, the nurses were great. Actually, hospital food, remember how we think about a hospital food as being like really just kind of not up to par? Well, this food was organic, it was fresh, it was all from local Vermont farms. It was like really good. So that's just an example of using that affirmation, and all these little tiny miracles happen which create this big miracle. So he ended up coming home, he was fine, and I was able to stay with him for a few days, and everything went well. So that's just a real example. So I'd encourage you actually to think about using that affirmation, and just, in any way that you feel inspired to use it, because it's really powerful. Okay, so that was number 3, is to use affirmations when you feel fearful and not in control of the circumstances that you're in. The 4th tip is you can use it actually in travel. So that same affirmation, everything has worked out perfectly, I actually have used when I've gone traveling, to make really easy connections or resolve issues with long lines or delays on flights. My son, the same person, Nick, is now studying in Edinburgh in Scotland, which is, if you've never been there, I highly recommend it. It's a totally beautiful city and country. And so I've been there a few times, and it's gotten to be kind of a joke between Nick and I that every time we go, Scotland is usually pretty cloudy, not a lot of sun. And every time I go, we do a lot of bike riding, and we like to be outdoors and do athletic stuff outside. And every time I go to Edinburgh, again, I'm using this affirmation, everything has worked out perfectly. It's really sunny. I mean, I've been on 2-3 week trips to Scotland, and it's been really, really sunny, at least part of the day, like a morning, a whole afternoon, but often like the whole day, which is often unheard of. And then the funny thing is that when I leave, I head to the airport, and then inevitably I get a message from Nick as I'm waiting for my plane to depart back to the US from Edinburgh. I get this email saying, "Oh, well, all of a sudden, it's cloudy in Edinburgh now. I think you must have set a spell over the city while you were, on your way out." So anyway, that's a great affirmation to use. So that would be the 4th tip. You can use it for travel, even commuting to work. Okay. Number 5 is to use affirmations when you go to sleep. A great affirmation that Marilyn Janae, who is a prosperity coach, recommends to her students is to just say, and this is actually, I guess it's not really an affirmation because it's not truly a statement, but it's the same technique, is just to say the words wealth, success, wealth, success, wealth, success. She recommends you say that first thing in the morning and just before you go to bed, because that's when your subconscious can really more easily be open to that kind of thing and really take action on that statement. So that would be an example as well. So that's tip number 5. Say affirmations on your way to sleep. So those are the 5 tips. The first one is recording your affirmations and maybe playing them first thing in the morning. The second one is to say them in rounds over and over and over again, and then switch out and try a new one. The third one is to use them when unexpected situations come up and you feel kind of fearful and worried. The 4th is to use them when you're traveling. And the 5th one is to say them when you go to sleep. So I hope those have been helpful. Feel free to share these tips with other people. And think about one step. If you've seen my previous videos, I'm all about taking action. So, what affirmation can you try today? And just try it over and over and over again and see how it makes you feel, how it improves your, how you feel, your emotions, that you're thinking, as well as the actual events in your life. You might want to try everything has worked out perfectly. I'm sure something will come up today that you could use that towards. So that's a fun kind of experiment that you could do and see what works well for you. And then I just would like to remind you about my book that has just come out. It actually will be published early in February. This is 2014. And the name of the book is Go Forward Fearlessly, a Spiritual Roadmap for how to be happy, stress-free, and confident despite massive change. And it's about how I have navigated many transitions, career, financial, health, for instance, in my life, and I've helped other people, students and clients, in their lives. So it's basically chapter by chapter, some really practical and spiritual approaches to navigating transition successfully. And one of the chapters actually is about affirmations. At the end of that chapter, there are many, 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 I think there's 2 or 3 full pages of affirmations for specific situations that I have found really helpful. So to grab your copy and to get a pre-ordered book, go to goforwardfearlesslybook.com/pre-order. And then you can order right there. So thank you so much. Hope these tips have been helpful. Affirmations work really well. And maybe tomorrow when it's in the 20s, I won't have to wear my hat. Take care. Peace and blessings.